America, my name is Osei-Frimpong, and we're going to do a show. It's going to be, are we going through gentrification or ethnic cleansing? Now, one has all of these awful connotations, and then the other, like gentrify, if you don't know, comes from gentry, gentrification comes from gentry, it just means high class of a certain stature. So that would be like not the worst thing. So how are we being moved out? Yes.
You loaded only one of the actual media files. All the other media files you loaded are the wrong ones.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. So gentry. So are we being ethnically cleansed, or are we gentrifying? Because gentrifying sounds fancy, but if the outcomes are the same, then it doesn't really matter what we call it. And I'm going to ask if the outcomes are the same. And I'm going to ask, why is it the case that in 2018 we can be gentrified so easily? Marcus, the files are going to be on the USB, and the USB is going to be named gentrification. If we're on 2018, how could we be moved out so easily? It's not like this is slave days. And the question is it really not like this is slave days? Because I'm not so sure. And what got me thinking about this was a book, Slavery and Social Death. I'm going to talk to you about this book, and we're going to go through the arguments. And I'm going to talk, and by the end of this show, it's going to be a fast and a little bit of a short show. By the end of the show, you're going to know why we're always running. My mom moved from South Carolina to California, to kind of get a better life. And then I was raised in California, and now I'm back in Athens, Georgia, because I can't afford California. So somehow I'm always running. We need to stop running. I'm going to tell you why we're always running and how that's not consistent with freedom. After the opening, Marcus, hit the beat.
To the beat, y'all.
Yeah. Sound good to me. Never change the ways for the world or the government. If I was the president, then I would state facts. You leave it up to me, I paint the White House black and ain't no future in your front.
So the question is, are we talking about ethnic cleansing, or are we talking about gentrification? This is very important for those people who live in Athens, because Athens just elected a very progressive county commission with a very progressive mayor. But I worry that these progressives are going to be very good at lowering the poverty rate by getting rid of black people. It's a very popular thing to do in America. You lower the poverty rate by getting rid of black people, because we're poor. But it's not our fault. We'll talk about that later. The question is that, and there's a deep and robust history of lowering the poverty rate by getting rid of black people. It's done in San Francisco. It's done in New York. They're trying to do it in Chicago. But how do you do it? We're going to talk about how you do it. We're going to talk about those cities later. But first, I'm going to talk to you about something called natal alienation. Natal alienation, that's a concept that Orlando Patterson, the writer of this book, talks about in terms of the quality of degradation that black people are met with during slavery. And he calls it natal alienation because you weren't even allowed to keep your family ties. They could rip your family apart at any moment in time. Can you give me the picture of the book? Should be floating around. You weren't even allowed to keep your family ties. They could rip your family apart at any time. That's the quality of alienation we're talking about. That means your marriage didn't count. You thought you were married, but it turns out that when your master decided that you weren't married anymore. Right? Or if you're a guy, you were a buck. You were there to create like more little slave properties for your master. Or if you're a woman, you were just raped. That's why, if you're black and from America and you go to Africa, the first thing they're going to notice is you don't look like us, because genetically we're not like them. So the quality of alienation African American slaves who were brought over here, in boats, face is deep, is qualitatively deep. And the question is, have we moved that far from that alienation. Right? So I'm going to read you a little bit of a passage. This is the text. All right. So I'm going to read you a little passage. My partner Sin is going to put this on the screen. All right. So here's from the book Slavery and Social Debt. This is a little bit on natal alienation. It was this alienation of the slave from all formal, legally enforceable ties of blood and from any attachment to groups or localities other than those chosen for him by the master that gave the relation of slavery its peculiar value to the master. The slave was the ultimate human tool, as imprintable and disposable as the master wished. Right? That's what was at stake in slavery, and that's a very particular kind of alienation. It's not just like you were sent off wandering to the desert, but you kept your culture and your family intact. No, every bit of your life, all of the ties that you thought to exercise yourself through were actually just at the whim of your master. And the question is, are we farther than that? Are we farther than that? And remember, I have in mind two particular housing projects, or public-private housing developments in Athens, Clark County. Right now, it's called Bethel Homes in Athens and Athens Garden, which is also in Athens. Both of them kind of have a timeline on them, and the residents are going to be asked to leave there and not too long from now. And the question is, and remember, Athens has been black since there's been an Athens. At the city's founding, it was 50% black. Now it's just a hair under 30%. With all of the new money coming into Athens, it's not a foregone conclusion that it will have a sizable black population in 15 or 20 years. Right? There used to be black people in San Francisco. There used to be black people in New York. We might talk about a time where there used to be black people in Chicago. I don't know. But I can tell you right now, there used to be a lot of black people in Athens. Right now, we're a little under 30. And if they're serious about lowering the poverty rate, but not serious about retaining the black people, they're going to lower the poverty rate by cleansing the city of its black people. And that's a problem because black people have always been here. Yes.
I mean, technically, San Francisco does still have some black people. They're just, in jail.
They're in jail. Yeah, we'll talk about that. So we need to talk about more robust ways of lowering the poverty rate in a way that honors its black community that has always been there, not just moves around. Because the people who lived in Athens Gardens and the people who lived in Bethel Homes didn't always live there. They used to actually own houses. Their great-grandparents owned houses or owned little itty-bitty houses or owned some sort of property or rented somewhere else. And then they were moved into Athens Gardens and moved into Bethel Homes, 40, 50, 60 years ago. So why are we always moving? Right? So what does it mean? A lot of what I do here is try to give a more robust account of what freedom means, because it's not just being alone and doing things. Real freedom is a social accomplishment. That means you move through your social connections in a free way, right? Real freedom is a social accomplishment. You can't be free and not be able to do things. A person alone in a jungle is not free. Right? The tiger is indifferent to you. Instead of having a relationship with the tiger, you want a relationship with a friend, with your spouse, with your colleague, a relationship that respects your freedom. Real freedom is a matter of having the person who's interacting with you respect your freedom. Right? And that's how you can live meaningfully. Right? So the question is, now, are our marriages more stable now than they were during slave times? You look at the divorce rates and they're hovering about 70%, and then, I don't know, right? So I don't know if it's not a foregone conclusion that being married now offers you more stability than it was being married 150 years ago. I'm not sure. The stressors are different. Before, it was just your master separating you and then your marriage was done. Now, you have to ask yourself, black people at home, Can your marriage survive you losing your job? Can your marriage survive you losing your insurance? And if the answer is no, and your boss is not black, and most of your bosses are not black, can your marriage survive a swing in the economy? Can your marriage survive you losing your house? And then are any of those things up to you? Can your marriage survive a Shonda Rhimes show that tells your wife, well, if he's not making it, you should just go and find your bliss? And if your marriage can't survive that,
Is there a Shonda Rhimes show that doesn't say that?
That's just a Shonda Rhimes microphone. Yeah.
Is there a show from Shondaland that does not teach that idea?
So this means your marriage is black people, your marriage is as unstable now as it was back then. It's just the instability has been inserted in a different way. Because we don't control, I've said, we don't control the ideas. We don't control production. That means black people, we don't control the production of ideas and the distribution of ideas. Shonda Rhimes and Oprah do, but Shonda Rhimes and Oprah were picked because they put forth a particular message, which might not be my message. So are these ties that much stronger now? Are you freer now and able to move in them more than you were back then? And that's a question. So that's just about marriage. We might not be freer in marriage. And so people say like, okay, so our marriages are a little bit dicey, and that's because of financial instability. Maybe the difference is we don't own enough land. If we owned more things, we would be free. So the problem is ownership. And I'm saying like, no, there's a more fundamental problem that's not ownership. Because I'll tell you, from what I know, put up the foresight. Oh no, give me the Black Wall Street, the aftermath of the Black Wall Street. Good, yeah, that one. All right, so you might know, you should know, Tulsa, a vibrant black community. They all own their shops and they own their lands. That did not matter when the bombs came. And apparently someone in my Facebook said we were actually in that fight. This is from Tulsa, 1921, when black people were doing too well and white people got in their feelings about it. So apparently the black shop owners will say we were in the fight until the planes came with bombs. And that's when we lost it, right?
That does tend to make a difference there.
That does tend to, we were in it.
we were winning, and then
when the planes came, the things got complicated.
Can we point to this the next time they bring up the Second Amendment?
Yeah, we're not going to win that fight. So you can say that these people owned their land. It didn't matter. Now give me the foresight. So the problem can't be ownership. And there's another.
I want both.
The news article too about like them just running away Negroes. Yeah, there you go. So this is from Forsyth County, Georgia. These people own their lands until white people decided they wanted them gone. And then they left, and they were run out. This is the right in the early part of the 20th century. This is a color photo that doesn't look too long ago. I just found this on Google. It doesn't look like it was taken too long ago. So I suspect,
if I recall correctly, you used to hear stories about this actually in the mid 80s on Geraldo when he wasn't on Fox News.
Okay, so there you go. So not much has changed. It doesn't matter what you own. Forsyth County does not want you there. And so ownership, just the property. And I can imagine, let's say like the Klan is burning a cross on your yard and you come up with your little deed saying, but I own this yard, please leave. I suspect that will not work. So the problem is not ownership, it's a more fundamental problem. Our relationships are not recognized. That means it doesn't matter if you've been here since there was in Athens. They will kick you out of housing, and you will just be told, well, here's a voucher that you yourself did not negotiate. Some other person negotiated on your behalf to go someplace else. So, Marcus, you got what's up?
I was about to say it doesn't help that you can't call the police because in Forsyth County you're calling John on his cousin Bubba.
Yeah, you can't. You can't call the police. They work for you, and then there are all these. They work for them, and there are all these stories about police officers being told they don't arrest black people, and black police officers being told only to arrest black people. You're not allowed. You're pretty much not allowed to arrest white people. That's just kind of what's known as a black police officer. You don't arrest white people. So, you have to understand one: freedom is a social achievement. So when all of your social ties are invalidated, you're not free. You're just set adrift. And that's what we are. We are people set adrift. And that's what we need to take seriously, what it is to be a people set adrift. And this actually came to my mind because one of my favorite Indian places in town, Taste of India, has been let loose from their lease. They've been here for about 12 years. And, they've been making their lease payments. They're downtown. I know. You're horrified. I know. They've been making their lease payments for 12 years. And then Taste of India, their lease came up and their lease was not renewed. Their white landlord said, okay, so we have a better offer for this space.
No restaurant has survived in that space. Nothing has survived in that space.
Oh, yeah, you've been here for a
while. Yeah. No. Taiki, that's where Taiki's game store started out, was behind there in a little closet. Nothing survived in that space. That is the longest running store in that space.
Well, their lease was not renewed, not because they didn't pay their rent on time, but because their owner got a better deal.
I hope it lasts 12 years.
Yeah, after 12 years, you were keeping it warm until white people wanted it back. That's our life. So a lot of these, there used to be a black business there. There used to be a black business there. That business used to own that land. No, it didn't matter. You were always keeping it warm. Some of you guys who watch the show might know my buddy Yvette. She was telling people about Decatur. Her family's from Decatur. She grew up in Decatur. Now some of her friends are having problems because white people want their land back. And so one of her friends used to be like, look, I used to have a hard time paying my property taxes, but I used to be able to call the tax office and say, I'm going to get you. It's just going to be a little bit later. And the tax people used to be very good about it. Till about 2 years ago. And then I tried that and tax people were like, no, if you don't give us our taxes back, we're taking your land. If you don't. So that was you thought you owned it. You thought this was yours, but there's been a lot of development around, and now we want it back, so we're going to play hardball. We want our land back. What? And so the equivalent is all right, so white people are on the phone, they want their land back. That's your life now. And that was always your life. That's what we need to get through and saturate. That was always the situation. You were always on somebody else's land. And we need the quality of recognition that supports our claims. And this is our social claims. The fact that no, this is our land. And it's not going to be just a deed, because you can talk to all the people who have been eminently domained, all the black people who've been eminently domained for a various stadium or the Olympics or some project or an airport. For what? Freeways. Greenways here who've been eminent domained and out of their land, and they had all of the right paperwork, but it didn't matter because they didn't have the political the political power to actually defend that. There's a prominent woman in town who owns her property, has been in the same house for 40 years, owns it outright, but is convinced that the university has plans on her house. And I think she's right.
Well, they actually send people to her door.
They send people to her door to knock on the door and say, hey, do you want to just sign over here? We'll give you some cash for your house. She's like, they have a plan for my house. And some people say oh no, she's paranoid. I think she's right. She lives right next to the university, right next to the university football stadium. And if you don't know anything about UGA football, there is a plan for all of those neighborhoods, and it does not involve her. And so...
Hold on. She lives next to the stadium, and people question whether or not the university wants her land?
Yeah, and you have to understand, black people were kind of we're thinking about Now we're thinking maybe about a generation. The university has like a 40-year plan. And it either includes you or it doesn't include you.
So, I remember when I was younger, there was a church that's advertisement had a football on it, said, just come see us after your other religion on Sunday.
Right. After your other religion. So there's a plan for her house. There's a plan for her house because none of our enforceable ties matter. And I first started, this is a black thing, not just an Athens, Georgia thing. I talk about Athens, Georgia, but this is a United States black situation. I first came to this realization when I saw when I was living in Chicago a few years ago, when they just closed 53 schools in Chicago, predominantly black schools. They just closed 53 schools. That was Rahm Emanuel. He's a Democratic mayor. Closed 53 schools. And I was like, they're just trying to get rid of black people because when you close 53 schools, that means you're firing a lot of black teachers and just destabilizing black life. And schools are community anchors. So if you're just closing those schools and sending those kids elsewhere, you're saying that we don't care about any of your ties or any of your communities or any of your anchors. So they just closed 53 schools, and there's a recent report came out. I don't have a picture about it. There's a recent report about it. Turns out they were supposed to close them to increase they were low performing schools, but they were just full of poor black kids. So yeah, they were low performing because poverty is stressful. But it turns out, 5 years after the school closings, there's been no market increase in school performance. Shock. And we've lost a few thousand kids, just lost. I think that was the actual word. Lost. We don't know where they went. They were supposed to go to this other school, but they just kind of disappeared. We think maybe they moved out, but we disappeared them.
But isn't Rahm Emanuel a rock star of the Democratic Party and progressive movement?
No, this is important. That segues very nicely into the other progressive city. I spent a lot of time in Chicago. I've also spent a lot of time in San Francisco, in the Bay Area. And that's another place where there used to be black people. There used to be black people, and this is a progressive city. They like everything. They like animals, and there's a great book called Safe Space about how actually urban means two things: gender nonconforming, which means some variety of queer sexuality, and also black. So like anytime you have an urban environment, it was gender nonconforming and black. But San Francisco figured this out, and so they set the gender non-conforming crowd against the black crowd. So Safe Space ended up being a matter of now we call the cops on black people. And now it's the case, this is from 2013. I think this number is right, but the actual population has gone down. It used to be San Francisco was 6% black, but it was 56% of the jail population. Now I think it's closer to 3% black, and I think the jail population is the same. And to be clear, there are two people you can thank for that when this was all going down. Willie Brown, a black man, and Kamala Harris, a black woman, who none of them had a hard time putting black people in jail. Or they never met a landlord or developer they didn't like. Yeah.
Ms. Harris has come out now against the bond system. She hasn't apologized for all those families she destroyed, but she hates the bond system.
She hates cash bond. She spent her entire career. Now, as a lawyer, you can do a lot of things with a law degree that don't include putting black people in jail. And I said before, remember at the beginning of the show, I was like, none of our social bonds matter. None of our social bonds matter, and that includes the bond of marriage. When you put a black person in jail, you're breaking up a family. Does that matter? No. No, in contrast that, the glee with which we casually send black people to jail with the agony the nation's going through about breaking up immigrant families right now and our deportation policy. I'm not saying we should break up immigrant families. I'm just saying that if we take these social bonds seriously, we need to take them seriously for all people, including us. We don't talk about jail as a form of separating. What you do when you send someone to jail is separate them from their kids. But that's what you do. You rip their family apart when you send them to jail. And that's a problem for at least me. It should be a problem for all of us. And we don't talk about that in our incarceration debate as ripping families apart. Because our black bonds don't mean anything. And they really never have since slavery. Now, you can say like, well, you could always, if you have all of your papers right and you do everything right, you can just contest this stuff in court. Now, give me the video. No, the video first. The video first, yeah. Send it over.
Now, your father's killer was never prosecuted.
Never.
What you came to learn after the event was it did have to do with a dispute over a cow, right?
Yeah, he had cows, and I don't know how we had farmland adjoining each other, and some of his cows had actually gotten in our pasture in 1963. They came to round them up to get them, but there was one they could not round up. He left them there, and then on the morning of March the 14th, 1965, we met him when we were on our way to church. And my father told him, if you come tomorrow, he would get some others to come and help, because they knew this was a problem cow. And but the next morning, when everyone gathered at the pasture, this man started claiming 5 or 6 of our best cows, and my father argued with him. And according to the others, my father said, "We don't have to keep arguing; we'll just go to court." And he was actually going to his truck. The man is still talking. He turned around to say something, and that's when he was shot.
So, struggles over land are throughout your story.
All right. So, she was shot over a cow. Let me set the story again. Shirley Sherrod's dad says, "That's my cow." The white neighbor says, "No, that's my cow." Shirley Sherrod's dad says, "We'll just figure this out in court." The white neighbor says, "No," and shoots him. Now, I bet dollars for donuts that the white neighbor's family still owns a lot of land. Nobody ever went to jail for that. But that's how much your property rights just don't matter in these United States. That was about 1968. That wasn't that long ago. That wasn't that.
Just do the work.
What's up?
No.
No. That wasn't that long ago. So none of your formal ties matter. And that's black life. And that's why we're always running. That's why, I'm saying right now, I'm staying in Athens and I'm fighting. Because I'm tired of running. Like, the black community right now is a hair under 30%. When they put me in the ground in Athens, I want to still be at 30%. And I want us to have a solid middle class. I don't want us to do the New York route or the San Francisco route or what Chicago is trying to do by getting rid of poverty, by just jettisoning its black population. We need to do justice by its black population. And so Athens Gardens and Bethel Homes, I think they're about 250, I want to say either 250 units.
Bethel is 250 units by itself. Athens Garden, I think, is 175.
Okay. Those are units. So, we don't know how many
Whole families.
Whole families. So, we're talking about 250 families.
250 families.
With 250 families.
Bethel is easily going to be 3 times that. Very few of their units don't have at least 3 occupants.
Okay. So, the word on the street, if you ask people in the know, they say Bethel has 5 years left in it because of deferred maintenance. People have heard different things. Every time I say 5 years, someone always goes like this. So the reason they're going to give is deferred maintenance, so we have to close it, and then they're going to end up giving those people a voucher. And then that voucher is going to not be good enough to stay in Athens, so they're going to be jettisoned off to some rural county where they don't even have clean water.
I guess.
No, we're good.
So let's just go ahead with a clear prediction. They're going to fail a HUD inspection, lose their HUD contract, and then not have to honor the fact that it's supposed to be there until 2030. That's just my prediction.
That's your prediction.
That's my prediction.
But that's an educated guess. It's not like you're not just like.
No. That's absolutely an educated. I mean, they've already failed one, and the contract is risky.
Right. So they're setting this group up to fail. It's in a very attractive part of Athens.
And we have a new commissioner who pointed out that if this sort of thing was happening on his watch, he'd want to know. So I'm hoping he's watching now and heard the story of Bethel. This is happening on your watch. It was been happening for years. Right. And so in January, when you take office, well, you can start doing something about that.
Yeah, no, we can do something about that because those people have been in Athens for a stretch. Those people, some of them might have been kicked out of Oconee County because they got Klan stuff going on there. But those people have been in Athens for a stretch.
No, they were never allowed to.
These people have been allowed for a stretch, but apparently that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean anything. It should mean something when your family's been here forever. Since your family's been here from Athens, that should mean something. More than a $600 voucher to try your luck someplace else. And since housing costs in Athens have raised, but salaries in Athens have stayed the same, these people are going to be kicked out. And that's a public policy problem because we haven't figured out a way to, one, pay black people for their work, and two, honor black people for the ties they have. And that includes both to their localities and to their families. Yeah.
And just to talk a little bit about Bethel, people will say that Bethel's not being targeted, but when you have a juvenile judge say to you, Mr. Willis, I know I am seeing disproportionately young men from the Bethel community, but there's nothing I can do about it. Come on. How do we continue to lie and say they aren't being targeted?
How do you get rid of black people? You destabilize their lives. If you're in Chicago, you close their schools. In Athens, you insert instability into their housing situation. And you prep it. So pretty soon you'll have them blaming themselves.
Oh, yeah.
And then you have them blaming themselves for not being able to find a job that makes rent. And then you're surprised when their kids don't do very well in school because the kids have stuff on their mind because there's this stress all around them. And it's destabilizing. So this is what happens when you're a community with no formal or legally enforceable ties of blood. We can just rip apart families. You destabilize their jobs. And if you can't destabilize them directly, you do it indirectly by propaganda. Like I said, those Shonda Rhimes show that says, well, if your man's not making what he should be making, you should leave him and find your best self. For the record, I told my wife before we got married that I might go to jail or I might lose my job. So this better for worse thing, I court the worse. So our marriage has to mean something if it's going to work out, because it's not just an idle thing. This isn't for faster or for looser. My life is loose, and when it's not really fast. And so here's the number of the lawyer you're going to call when something happens, and then something might happen to our finances.
I need you to stay off that bike. Yeah. I'm not even going to lie. I mean, Athens drivers already are bikes. No, I need you to stay off your bike.
Yeah, so I bicycle around town. So if an accident happens, I'm also very good on a bicycle. If an accident happens, it wasn't me. I'm agile. I'm very agile. So the question is, what ties do we have that are actually enforceable? I don't think we have too many. And what drove this point home was when I saw an interview with Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel is a billionaire. He's a billionaire who might be known for taking down Gawker. He's known for founding PayPal. You might know of PayPal. It's been in all the papers. It's how you pay me if you go to my website and sign up for a membership, which you should, because my news is very important, but it doesn't come for free. I have to pay for rent here, and Broderick Flanagan allows me to use his studio, and we have a live studio audience, so all this costs money. So you should go to funkyacademic.com, and you should sign up for a membership so I can keep the show running. Yes. And let's not forget, we have to keep Matthew employed, even though while he's not here, he'll be back, people. Yes, and I keep the intern Matthew, who's wonderful and very smart. I like to pay him a little. I like to pay him more. So if you like what I'm doing, if you want me to keep doing it every week at 4 o'clock at Broderick Flanagan Studio, go to funkyacademic.com. And it's not just, I try to give Athens news, but I try to give it in a way that's portable. I'm sure they're trying to get rid of people in Richmond, Virginia, and they're trying to get rid of people in East Palo Alto. of San Francisco, and they're trying to get rid of people in Oakland. Tupac, they don't want you anymore. What? St. Petersburg, Florida. Pretty much anywhere there's black people around places that white people want. Decatur, they don't need you anymore in Decatur. Depending on who you talk to, certain parts of Atlanta, your time is done.
So one of my YouTube friends just moved to St. Pete.
St. Pete.
Yes, one of my YouTube friends, and just
Gentrifier?
moved to St. Pete.
All right, so they don't want you there anymore, black people. So what does that mean? It shouldn't matter that they don't want you there. The problem is, in America, it matters. Because guys like Peter Thiel will honestly say, and this is a quote from Peter Thiel, he's a billionaire, and billionaires don't lie unless it makes them money. He's got no reason to not lie. When he took down Gawker, he was like, look, if you're a single-digit millionaire in the United States, you really don't have serious access to the legal system. So this is Peter Thiel, a billionaire, saying, if you're just a single-digit millionaire, you don't have real rights. I can do whatever I can to you because it doesn't matter. You're just a single-digit millionaire. Right? So if Peter Thiel's saying that about single-digit millionaire, this is Peter Thiel explaining why he backed Hulk Hogan in a lawsuit, because Hulk Hogan couldn't handle his legal business, so he needed the backing of a billionaire. Hulk Hogan doesn't have enough money to handle his legal business. Do you think you do? So if Peter Thiel is saying that he can do whatever he wants unless you're a single-digit millionaire, that means we are food. And someone else said, we're not even food. Well, because what are we?
We're chum.
We're chum. We're the stuff that attracts the bait. we're chum.
We're just out there waiting for something to come along and eat us so that something bigger can have it.
Yeah. That's our place. We're pre-baked. So that's our spot in this America. What can we do to not be? We need to force recognition. That means, and recognition is a hard thing to force because it's a propaganda thing. That means we need you to share this video to all of your friends and all of your people. Share this, like this on Facebook, or find me on Facebook. Like this video, share it on Twitter, put this on your Facebook. Have this conversation, because we're being cleansed because we're black, because we're poor, because we're black. We're stigmatized because we're black. So if we're being kicked out because we're poor, and we're poor because we're black, we're being kicked out because we're black. And I talked a little bit at the beginning of the show about the Taste of India, this Indian food place I really like, but they were just asked not to be there. I want to contrast that with a place I worked when I was in Chicago, the Seminary Co-op bookstore. The Seminary Co-op bookstore does not make money. It never, in the post-Amazon world, it was not a bookstore that was going to make it. It shouldn't have made it. It had a staff. It paid me very little, peanuts, but it paid a few, it's the head of it's a general manager and a few people. It paid them real salaries. But it was never supposed to make it. In a rugged free market, the Seminary Co-op bookstore has gone the way of the dodo bird, or it's gone the way of the black population in San Francisco. It was never going to make it. But the university decided to give it land, and charge it.
Universities give land out?
To people they like. We want the bookstore. We want to be a bookstore. We're bookstore people. We want a bookstore culture. It makes us easier to retain faculty. So we'll just give you your business land and a loan for when you can't cover your payroll. Don't worry, general manager. The general manager's white, and they're all just kind of bookish bookstore people. I was the black guy they brought in because I was a black guy who could talk about books, which I still do. I'm still the black guy who could talk about books. I've just changed my medium. I got books. So they never had to take a pay cut. The university just fronted them because they liked them around. That's the difference. That wasn't about ownership. That's just being someone the university likes. That's being someone we'll go out of our way to respect your social ties. That's not unlike, it's similar in class, but different in amount of violence to those stories you hear of white rapists who go free because we worry about their futures. Right? We worry about the ties they have to the community. We honor their ties so much that we let them free for their rapes. That's I think his name is Brock something, Turner, Brock Turner. Yeah, like I worry about his future. His ties to the community matter so much. We're gonna let him go from the crime, and contrast that with black people whose ties matter so little. We're not gonna even wait for you to commit a crime before we just get rid of you. Like that's the difference between being recognized as a rights-bearing person and not. What's up?
Oh no, you just drove that point home. Good. I hadn't even, as you were talking about it earlier, I was trying to think of a relatable recent. No, Brock Turner. The quote of, "Oh no, he has such a bright future."
He's got real social ties that matter. It didn't matter about the kids whose schools you tied, whose schools you closed. It didn't matter about all the families you break apart when you send black people to jail. It didn't matter about the 250 units that are being. We're not worried about their future. The 250 units in Bethel Homes. We're going to give them. There's going to be some sort of deal where we're going to give them a little bit of payout, a pittance. So we don't have to hear from them again. It'll be like a $600 check saying, well, that's enough for a security deposit. Maybe $1,000. Give $1,000. That's $1,000.
I just figured they just hand out Section 8 vouchers.
Section 8
They're not even gonna give them money. They're not gonna give them money. They give them Section 8 vouchers.
Section 8
Say go to some other county.
Yeah. And a county where you're not from, you don't know anybody, and they're not going to have the services for you. So that's the kind of recognition we need. We only get that recognition through a paper. That's why I'm starting a paper right here in Athens. I'm promising you in live, I'm telling the world, starting a paper, a hard paper. If you wanted to actually not put stress on my personal finances and maybe like my other life, please go to thefunkyacademic.com. Because it's happening, we can't do it anymore because that's the only way you force recognition, by getting these stories out and controlling the propaganda, the production of ideas, the production and distribution of ideas. So I'm starting a paper. I got the quotes, still figuring out how to get the money. You can help me with the money by going to funkyacademic.com. Sign up for a $5 membership, $15 monthly, or if you're rolling like that, give me $50 a month, or make a huge one-time donation because startup costs are going to be something. It's happening. I do a lot on faith so far. It's provided, but I'm a little worried. But we're going to need. I need the equipment. I need distribution, and I want to be able to pay off the credit card bill once it goes down. So, the only way we force recognition is through starting a paper, through propaganda, producing and distributing our own ideas, and that's going to happen. Thank you. One of our studio audience members just did the right thing. One of our studio audience members, I get a lot of thanks in my emails. Thank yous do not pay rent or build coalitions. Money does. Studio audience understands that. I need you at home because that's all going to go to toner. All of that's going to go to fees.
And PayPal takes a commission. So if you're in this, if you go here and you give money
in cash, it actually helps. Yeah. So if you're in Athens General, come by next Friday and just write a little check, or give cash or make the check out to cash. It all spends, but it's all going to go to the right place because we're doing the paper here. We're doing a paper because that's the only way you force recognition. Ownership will not get you there. It seems to come close, but then defending ownership still takes like a legal defense fund. That's why the NAACP had the NAACP, and then they had the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. It still takes defense. And like I said, when the Klan comes after you and you show your little deed, it doesn't matter. It matters as much as Philando Castile's gun permit. Right? So thank you for your time. Share to your friends. I kept it short enough for you to share at your next book group or your little gathering. Share and then talk about what I'm saying. Is what I'm talking about gentrification or is it ethnic cleansing? Because our depraved condition is directly tied to our ethnicity. That's all. And